Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Women on TV.tv, Worldwide TV Network, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. And if I see these two guys, it's always a fun show because the last time we were on a show together was 2018. And we were all at another studio, which is what I liked. However, things have changed in the world, so this is what it's all about. Wade, let's start with you. Who are you and where do you come from?
Well, Los Angeles native and graduate of UCLA Film School, after which I fell right into film criticism. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and that's where I met Tim. And we've been
turn his volume up a little.
we've been hooked at the hip ever since, and we are members of the L.A.Film Critics Association. We wrote together for a number of publications, Entertainment Today, Box Office Magazine, and we are now co-hosts of the Digigods podcast at digigods.com.
And that's a great thing, obviously. Tim, who are you? Where'd you come from?
Oh, Tim Cogshell, film critic for KPCC's Film Week, a show that I followed Wade Major onto. Dude, Wade, this year will be the 10th year.
No.
That you brought me onto that show.
No.
Yeah, this month.
Wow.
October the 10th, 2010 was my first appearance on Film Week with Wade and Larry Mantle, the host Larry Mantle of Air Talk, of course. 10 years, dude, just that. And of course, like Wade said, Wade's really the first person that I met, Wade and his mom, when my wife and I arrived in Los Angeles, January 1, 1990. And I went to work at Entertainment Today magazine. Wade was already there. He was already an editor. And fixing my prose left and right. It was so awesome.
Well, I was an editor because I took the job you turned down, and you were smart to turn it down. So
Entertainment Today magazine. Good times, though. Good times.
Yeah.
Crazy times, but good times. Many years at Box Office magazine together. As I say, Wade was has been on Film Week much longer than me. What's your tenure on Film Week, Wade?
Oh wow. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, if it's been 10 years, it was sometime around 2005, 2006, I want to say.
So 15, 16 years is what you're looking
at. Something like that, yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's really fun because when Wade first went on Film Week, he was the junior cub reporter, critic on Film Week, the new guy. And then when I went on Film Week, I was the new guy, and now I think maybe we're the veterans. Peter Rayner.
Pretty close.
A little bit longer than us, but I think we might be the vets on that radio program.
Pretty close.
So, and that's one reason why I wanted you guys on, because there's so very few of us around. I was never in the league at you guys where you guys were. I always admired you guys because I loved your friendship. It reminded me of a Siskel and Ebert without being the Siskel and Ebert, but in a different way. You had that I call it that West Coast swing, that West Coast vibe where, Siskel and Ebert had the Chicago thing going. But it was one of those things that I knew you guys would still be around. That's why I'm like, what are they doing now? I've got to talk to these guys. How are they doing now? Because the world has changed. Did a lot of people see this coming? No. Did I see it coming? Yes, I did. This is why I was experimenting, with things going back 5 years ago, up to 2 years ago, to where we are, where Movie Reviews and More has 6 million plus views a day and counting. 3.8 out of Tennessee alone, and Women on TV. I'm not even counting those numbers because I can't track the views yet, but I will be able to. And then starting as late as November 15th, as early as the 15th this month, will be on iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Comcast, and I can only imagine what the views will be because I don't go by followers, I don't go by likes, I don't go by subscribers, I just go by views. And I always tell people, you can always unsubscribe, you can always unfollow, you can always unlike, but you can't unview or view. So when it comes to you guys, this is about the views. Yes. Tim and Wade, talk about the first movie that you guys ever wrote about. What was that? Do you remember?
Wow. Tim, do you remember yours?
I do. My first review was of the Martin Ritt, Robert De Niro, Jane Fonda films, Stanley and Iris, 1990 film. That Martin made in the late 80s. Beautiful film. I don't remember whether or not it was Martin Ritt's last film. Somehow in my mind, I think that it was Martin Ritt's last film. Martin Ritt, Norma Ray, Sally Field, and all that kind of Martin goes back forever. So he made that film. in 1990, Robert De Niro, I liked the movie. It was a lovely little movie, sweet little movie. Out of character for De Niro at the time, who had still been doing, you know, a lot of gritty, sort of hardcore sort of stuff. He was playing this adult man who was illiterate and couldn't read. And he runs to Jane Fonda, who was you know, look, Jane Fonda in 1990, just get that image in your head. She was still ridiculously beautiful. And
Exactly.
she's playing this sort of like single mother who worked in like a pie factory or something. I don't know. It was just like, you know, this like blue collar. I'm looking at Jane Fonda in this movie and I'm like, no, baby. No. You're still looking like Jane Fonda. And all I know is if I owned that pie factory, you would own half of it by the end of the week. It was one of those kind of moments, but it was a lovely little movie. It was the first one I wrote under Wade's auspices as editor of Entertainment Today magazine.
Gosh,
Wait,
I don't even
your first one?
remember. My first one was Edward Scissorhands, and
Wow.
I remember being a little bit awed by the fact that I was going to, you know, my first year in college, I worked as an usher at a theater that has since been torn down, but that was exciting to be able to see free movies and get passes within the theater system. And he, you know, I remember the press screenings that we would always, you know, that we'd have that special press screening with the little programs that everybody would come, and it was so exciting. And here suddenly I'm on the other side of that. And so there was something really kind of exciting about that now, you know, you felt like you moved up a notch. And I remember I took notes through the whole movie, and it was about right near the end of the movie. I'm looking at this chicken scratch that I've done in the dark, and I thought, why am I doing this? Like, really, truly, why am I doing this? I did this in school, and I didn't enjoy the movies because I had taken notes, and I thought, you know, and I kind of evolved a philosophy in that moment. It's the only movie I ever took notes during, that first one, and I thought, you know what? I see a lot of other critics sitting there with their little, like, primitive Palm keyboards at the time and all this kind of stuff, taking notes. And I thought, if I don't remember it after having watched the movie, it's not worth writing about. And so I'm just going to write from my heart.
I always wondered how you guys did that, taking notes, because on the radio and the TV people, we didn't do that.
Right.
And then most all of us, we would stay to the end of the credits, and then you guys would stay to the very end, because sometimes we would have to. Yeah. And I was like, are we missing something? Why are they still there? I better start staying to the very end of the credits. And then now for Marvel films, we have to stay to the end. But I never forgot that, and I tell people to this day, stay until at least who does the voiceovers for the credits, because you may get a future job by doing that if you sent them something. But I always admired you guys because you guys were fascinating to me. And it was one of those things where I didn't come in until 93, because I was on the home video side of stuff from 87 to 93. And then I started doing the public access show, and it made me think of, so my first one I think was either Clerks or Reservoir Dogs. It was one of those two. And it was interesting. And then, so we fast forward now to, Tim, what was it like for you being locked down? And then what were you watching during when you were locked down this year?
Well, since the lockdown, Wade and I have been doing Film Week remotely, Zoom, just like this. Not Zoom, various different sort of things. Sometimes via Skype, I call into the radio station via Skype. Other people use other means. Of course, it's broadcast, radio, no visual. So it's more about the audio than anything else. So the show goes on. The show has gone on. We have not missed a beat of Film Week. Film Week is airing right this very second as we speak. This is Friday afternoon, 11 o'clock, a little bit after 11 o'clock. Film Week that I taped yesterday is airing right now. And oddly, the show has expanded even more. So now Film Week, which was, of course, a live Friday, either at 11 or at noon, depending on when you're talking about show, hour-long show about movie reviews, featuring myself and Wade and several other critics from the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, would be this live broadcast that we would drive into the studio here in Pasadena. The studio is not too terribly far from where I live. And we would go into the booth with the host, Larry Mantle, and we would do the movie reviews sitting right next to each other, laughing and interrupting each other and doing all of that. That was the way we did the show. Okay, now we don't do that. We are all in our respective homes as we are, and we talk over the microphones. We can't see each other. It makes for a very different sort of show. It's still a good show. Ironically, the show now airs both on Friday evening, and Saturday afternoons film week. Part of that is because it's a very popular show. Part of it has to do with other regions' programs being rearranged. But now the audience has effectively expanded by a multiple of 3 because of the pandemic, which is just, ironic and bizarre. But there it is. The audience is even bigger than it used to be, and I would say probably the same for the Cine Gods podcast that Wade and I have been doing. Mark joined us on the Cine Gods podcast not too terribly long ago. Previous host Mark Kaiser. So in a weird and strange sort of way, I'm as busy as I ever was when it comes to talking about and doing film reviews.
See, that's good.
I would agree.
How is it for you being locked down? Because you also have kids too, right?
I've got a daughter. Yeah, I've got a daughter who's in 2nd grade, and that definitely does add a dimension of challenge. We're doing distance learning, as they have so euphemistically called it. You have to sort of divide your attention in ways that you never expected to. Usually, you take the kids to school, you come home, you get some work. You got until 3 p.m. to get things done before the world melts down again. Now, school is happening, 15 feet from me, 2 rooms away. And it's a little bit weird. You hear all the kids on these Zoom sessions, and, the home now becomes compartmentalized. An office really is an office. I can't use, any room as an office. I can't walk past the class Zoom without disrupting it. So you suddenly have to plan your days in a much more efficient way. I feel like I'm at a job, with a cubicle. It's a little bit strange, but you do get used to it, and you keep reminding yourself it's not going to last too much longer, and it keeps lasting longer, but it won't last too much longer, I don't think.
Well, here's what I say. I keep telling people, if you could be able to adapt and adjust to this change, you'll be good. If you can't, it'll literally lose your life and your business, if not both. It is that dire.
True.
I'm constantly talking to people daily from around the world, a lot of the CEOs. And it's funny. I started reaching out to 2014, the Regal Theaters. Where are they in Tennessee? Where are our biggest numbers? In Tennessee. 3.8 million views a day and counting. Just 5 shows there. They go up between 1 to 7,000. It used to be 12 to 34,000 a day. So one of the shows will have 1 million views. The other one's at 976 today. So in the next 10 days or 15 days, the most it'll be at another million show. What I found out, I was trying to tell them, how can we get more people to go to the theaters around the country? Because when I was going to Georgia, Florida, traveling around for drum corps shows, I was going and checking out the theaters. Guess what? The theaters are closed in New York and Los Angeles still. They're open in Georgia, Florida, Texas, but no one's seeing anything. I talked to, I was doing an interview. They were interviewing me yesterday. I'm like, so you went to the theaters in Florida yesterday in Clearwater? Yes. How was it? Only 5 people. They went to go see, the 40th anniversary of Star Wars? I go, so where'd you sit? And she goes, we all had to sit on the side. I sat in the back on the side, and another couple sat in the front. There was only 5 people in that theater. And they did you peek into the other theaters? She goes, yes, I didn't see anybody else. And I go, how was parking? Because you have to put all this stuff into the equation. And I said, I've talked to 80 people. I've asked 80 people. 79 out of the 80 people said they would not go back to the theaters today. Would you guys go back to the theaters today if the movie theater is open?
I'm gonna have to say no, not today. I mean, that's your literal question. Today, theaters are open. Just go to the theaters. Today, no. For one thing, none of the movie theater chains. They all have sort of like these ideas. Movie theaters can open in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, they just decided not to. Many of them have put out sort of ideas about how they would construct things and whatnot. But yeah, to be honest with you, no, it's not. I don't see it being effective enough at the moment for me to go to a movie theater right now. But to be honest with you, what it really has to do with this, I go to a movie theater for my own pleasure and enjoyment and comfort. That's why I go to a movie theater. I do not want anything about going to see a movie to be remotely stressful. At all. This is the exact opposite reason that I'm going to the movies. If you insert a stressful dynamic, even if it's just psychological, into the experience of going to the movie theater, well, then I'm already out. I don't want any stress at all. So that has to be the dynamic in order to get me back into the movie theater. It has to be a non-stress, psychologically as well as actually physically, a situation whole and complete, so that I can just wander off into a movie theater like I have for almost all of my 59 years on this planet, and then I'm back in the movie theaters again. But if I got to worry about anything, then I'm good right here in front of my 47-inch television.
Wade?
I would go back, but the movie would have to be worth it. Like, if it's just an ordinary indie film, it's not worth the risk. It's got to be a movie that is so good. It's got to be a big screen movie. It's got to, even Tenet, I don't think that would have gotten me out. Having seen Milan, hindsight, that wouldn't have done it either. But you know what? I looked at the last trailer for the new James Bond film. If that were in a theater right now, yeah, I'd be there.
So here's the thing. I also said it's what happens when people do in the dark. So you got to wear your mask into the theater, no matter what, even if it's Florida and Georgia. And those are the two states out of the five I've been watching: Georgia, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, and Arizona. All red states. I spent a lot of time in them the last 2 years just analyzing things and going to the theaters. They take their mask off. It's what you do in the dark that happens. Once you start taking the mask off, would you put your mask on the entire time as watching a 2.5-hour movie? I don't know. Like, how are you going to eat your popcorn? Because you have to wear your mask up to the concession stand. You got to wear it into the theater, out to the theater. And Tim, what you just said, that's a lot of mind playing with you. That's stressful, and that's not worth it. My whole thing is I barely drink. I don't smoke. I don't have any kids, and I'm not married. Going to the theaters was my way just to get away for 2 hours. The phone could be ringing and people getting texts, but at least I can turn it around and just do my best to enjoy a movie, because it's what you said, Wade. First of all, there aren't any good movies coming out except for maybe the James Bond one, and that's still questionable for December.
Yeah.
No, it's just still not safe. I even talked to Kim Richards. He's the CEO of Alliance Artists Entertainment. Not once, twice. We did a part 1 and part 2. Now, the Alliance Artists Music Group or Management Group have been around for 100 years. He himself said not once, twice, it's not safe to go to the movies. Still, working on talking to Greg and Bob Lemley from the Lemley Theaters, because I love going to NoHo, North Hollywood, California. That's my favorite place to go. One, concessions are just really nice and expensive. Their prices are really reasonable, plus you have ample parking. But I'm like, how do you save this movie theater? How do you do it? And the answer is, I haven't figured it out yet.
You're talking about the NoHo Limleys up on what is that, Lancashire, I believe. I lived in that neighborhood for many years, of course, and loved it, really loved it. And look, that neighborhood has gentrified several times but certainly in recent years. But let us not fool ourselves. The Limleys theater chain was in trouble before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
There had been talks, rumors, interviews about it being sold, absorbed to perhaps Netflix. Other things came up. I mean, Wade knows much more about all of this than I do. So we need to think about what the situation was with theatrical exhibition prior to the pandemic, what the pandemic has done to it, and if there is a way back, what is the way back to? If the way back is back to exactly where we were before, well, then the Limley theater chain is still in trouble. Absolutely. So, it's so something had to, I mean, Wade can talk more about the nature of exhibition and what's going on there.
I mean, I think exhibition has gone through some really interesting ebbs and flows. I think you both know this as well. We had, however long it was, 15, 20 years ago, where there was they overexpanded, and then there was this huge series of bankruptcies because they built too many theaters, thinking that if you build it they will come, and they patently did not. But then we also had around 2005, 6, and 7, when all the indie divisions that got acquired 12, 13 years earlier in the early mid 90s, the studios just said, it doesn't really work for our business model anymore. So Disney let go of Miramax, and Fine Line went away, and Warner Independent and Picture House. They all just kind of evaporated overnight, and it's taken from then until now for the indie market to rebuild itself. And during that time, chains like Laemmle and Landmark suffered because that was their bread and butter. Now Landmark has since been sold to Cohen, Charles Cohen of Cohen Media, who has done, I think, a very, very good job of building it into a more stable enterprise again in ways that Mark Cuban didn't necessarily do so, because Cohen's kind of has the wherewithal to do that. He's got, he's got his library. He's got, a DVD and Blu-ray distribution operation that's very, very robust. Tim and I have done commentaries for a lot of Cohen titles, so it's reassuring to see somebody who has that grasp of the business take over Landmark. I think Landmark's going to be fine. Laemmle, like Tim says, it was in trouble before because the indie business was kind of. When was the last time we saw a French film or an Italian film or a Japanese or a Chinese film that made really serious money? Parasite, yeah, it won Best Picture and it made a whole lot of money. But did it make Life is Beautiful money? Did it make Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon money? No. Did it make Cinema Paradiso money? And that that's been 25 plus years. It didn't. So that market where you could have Il Postino. Those films, those foreign films that came and did huge business, that just doesn't happen anymore. They live on DVD and Blu-ray now. So
or on a streaming service.
Or on a streaming service. That's right. So the question now is the theaters that really built themselves around that market, that indie market, the foreign films, the Tarantino films, the Spike Lee films, the like Clerks, the Kevin Smith little indie films, the Hal Hartley movies. Those are the filmmakers who kind of helped build the whole indie scene, and their movies aren't part of the indie scene anymore. So it's an open question. I think certainly that tier of exhibition has to reinvent itself, whether now or after the pandemic. It's going to have to reinvent itself no matter what.
And I keep telling everybody, this is not going for 5 years. It's just not. So we're going to have to learn to live with it. So my solution is we're going to have to do everything outside, because guess what? We're entering the second phase now. And I kept telling everybody back in February, we got to get to summer first. How are we going to do summer? I couldn't see summer happening. And I call it, two things. I call it the summer of nothing, and then the summer of change. The summer of nothing is the negative view. The summer of change is the positive view. Because what happened? There weren't any movies. So, everything was being streamed. So it's not like we haven't been able to see some links and stuff, but we have not been able to see each other and get together and talk about it like we would do after a screening, which was always fun. So now, I'm thinking of what kind of good films have you guys seen? Because yesterday, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, I saw the Herb Alpert film, documentary. I love. I've been waiting for it. Did you see it yet?
Great. It's one of the films we're talking about today on Film Week, which we taped yesterday. Herb Alpert is the neat documentary about Herb Alpert, who's 85 years old. Herb Alpert is 85 years old. If you'd put a gun to my head, I'd have said he was 63. Which is ridiculous. It doesn't even make any sense. I'm almost 60. How can he be 60? But he's just that ever youthful kind of guy. But Herb Alpert is 85 years old. The documentary is a really neat, sort of little walk through his life, which is really interesting. As a child, growing up in St. Louis, in Missouri, listening to all that Tijuana brass and all that stuff, I thought Herb Alpert was Mexican. And I think I thought he was Mexican for like 15 years. It wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s when he reinvented himself. He did that record Rise, that sort of funky hip hoppy kind of thing. And I was like, man, this Mexican cat is cool. And everybody like, Herb Alpert ain't Mexican, fool. What are you talking about? Tijuana brass. They're like, no, dude ain't Mexican. And all of that is in this film. And it's really, really, now it's a film that's made by people who love Herb Alpert. And by all accounts, Herb Alpert is a wonderful person. Wouldn't have mind, Brian, you can give your 2 cents to this. You and Herb right there. And it might have gone a little bit deeper, I think, into all facets of the man. He's a sculptor and all this kind of stuff. But when you have a movie that's made by people who love you and everybody in it is someone who loves you, sometimes you don't get to the more complicated sides of an individual. And I think that perhaps that film might have suffered from that. But what the heck? I love that movie.
Well, the interesting thing is John Scheinfeld, the director, we become really good friends. But what it was the movie before that, on Sergio Mendes.
Sergio Mendes, yeah.
And so the last interview I did was February 25th on a Tuesday. And goes down. It was the four of us. It was John, myself, Sergio, his wife, upstairs in the green room of the Grammy Museum. We walk out, had a screening. It was like 110 people. I'm like, this is way too many people here. And I'm like, they don't even know that there's a virus going yet. And they were off the street. And I was concerned because not Herb, Sergio was what, 85 or 86?
Yeah, they're both in the same ballpark. Yeah.
And I was like, they're all swamping him. And I'm like, John, I think you should take his wife out of here because this is not good. And then as soon as we walked out, I'll never forget, it was 10 after 9. The Lakers were getting out. Major League Baseball was calling opening season. NHL had called it, and the NBA called their season. And I never forgot that. And I said, John, I want, no matter what, I know you're going to open Herb Alpert movie in November, but I want to have first dibs at him. That was our last conversation. And then we did the Happy Days of Gary Marshall on our Zoom at that on ABC. And that's where our relationship developed. So I had been waiting for this documentary for a long time. And I knew you guys are still getting stuff before me because I'm kind of like that cavalier, the person who's always been on the out, who had to always beg his way in to come see some films because I was the small guy. And they're like, well, who are you? You know, your outlet's not big enough for to do this. I'm like, okay, I'll show you guys one day. I'm just going to outlast all you guys. And I never forgot that. So that's why I always admired you guys because I wanted to do what you guys wanted to do, but in a different level. And I was like, as long as they're still there, good for them. And I love Peter Raymer. And I told Jesse and Leonard Maltin, I'm like, I'll help you guys because you guys are doing stuff on Twitter and your Instagram, but no one's watching your shows. And I'm like, that's a travesty. You're Leonard Maltin still. And I'm like, okay, we'll do something together. But that's the stuff that I've been doing behind the scenes because I don't get a chance to see all those great movies that you got. I have to see them afterwards with the regular audience, and that kind of pisses me off.
But Brian, it's funny because we always looked up to you because we had to work for somebody else. You always worked for yourself. You were pioneering the one-man independent thing when all the other outlets are shutting down. I remember there was on Movie City News for a long time, there was a list of the last 150 film critics in America. And I was on it for a long time. Cool. I'm one of the last 150 film critics in America because it's cool when you're on the list. And then came the day, and Tim will remember this, the big slash and burn at box office, and box office decided we're not going to do reviews anymore. And the death call came in on everybody's cell phone, and I got it, and then Tim got it, and then we called each other. I'm like, did you get the call? He's like, yeah, I got the call. I said, hang on, I got to call everybody else. And everybody's calling everybody else. We're like, are we done? Are we gone? Because that was it. And you've never been that guy. You generate your own work, you make your own company, and now we went with the creation of cinegods.com, which is the parent site, and the digigods.com podcast that goes with it. We've had to start learning from scratch what you've been doing all along.
Yeah. Which is why you have 6 million followers and we don't.
Well, it's views and it's a day. But the thing I learned this. Remember Andy Culpepper, who was with CNN for 20 years? I never forget this. It was Andy that I really took a liking to, and I'm like, if Andy's there for 20 years, can he stay another 3 or another 5 years? What happens to his content? That's really what was ingrained in my head. And this is the early O's. I think it was 03. And I said, does he get a chance to keep all that stuff, or is it owned by CNN? I'm like, it's owned by CNN. I'm like, okay, I'm never going to have that. So I started putting everything in one place. So now, what are we at? 1.2 million views on our YouTube. So we can get, now and the end of the year, we could get to 2 million views on our YouTube. But it took me forever to get 1 million views. I thought it was going to happen over a year ago. And then, as you know, Facebook changed their algorithms. YouTube changed their algorithms. People come in. Twitter did the same thing. Instagram is owned by Facebook. And I was like, good thing I'm not online to these people because they start controlling what you're doing. And I don't like to be controlled by everything. And I can't follow the rules.
Right.
I'm not a rule follower. And so that's the reason I'm going to always help those people who are nice to me, who helped me, who were there before me, because there's so few of us left. And that's really, really important to me. So again, I'm still looking up to you guys, and congratulations on how long you've been together, because that means a lot to me, because there's no one to replace us. And that's very, very sad.
That's a great point. I mean, we do have our little kind of mutual admiration society. We've been around for so many decades, and I mean, you guys know, you go to screenings. It's not like when you're a film critic and you go to a screening, it's not like you're part of the general public where it's just a bunch of strangers. It's like a family screening. Everybody has their little place where they like to sit in the auditorium. Everybody kind of smiles and winks at each other. Sometimes, you might sit behind somebody and whisper something to them. And everybody kind of knows. And then afterwards, everybody stands around and talks to each other and kind of trades their ideas and kind of workshops what they're going to put in their reviews. And it's sort of, there's a pro and a con to it. The pro is it's really nice and warm and reassuring, and you do miss it in a time like this. But at the same time, there's something about seeing a movie with the public, sitting in an auditorium and with a room full of strangers. None of you had a remote control. You all had to get off of your duff and go out and drive to the theater. You have no idea what the socioeconomic or racial mix of people is you're going to sit with. You're just going to sit in a room with strangers and share an experience. And afterwards, you look around and you look in those faces, and if everybody's got a tear in their eye or if everybody's laughing, that brings the world together. That makes the world smaller. And that's what I miss about regular screenings with real people.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why, I got to have a part 2 with you guys. And I want to bring on 2 of the girls because, when I have Mike Szymanski or Gail Murphy on, we're telling stories of what it was like to interview people and their mouths drop. What was this, 20 years ago? No, as little as 4 years ago, because you can't do it anymore.
I know.
I have found a studio that's private in Hollywood that we utilize, which is great. And it's clean, it's new, we took it over, and it's built for us. So I would definitely love to have you guys in, because the first thing both people said was, wow, it's good to be around people. And it was surprising when they said that, because it meant a lot. I make sure I take their temperature checks. As soon as they come in, it's gated. They can wear their mask if they want, but it's set up for a 4-camera shoot, but also distance that we have in there. And that makes me happy. And they're never happy.
Right.
And then,
hey, Jeopardy went back on the air with new shows. If Alice Trebek, who's almost 100 and still dealing with a sort of cancer, Alex Trebek is back at work, hosting shows of Jeopardy. So these things can unequivocally be done. Our good buddy Sherman Augustus, who one of the stars of Into the Badlands, is going to be on Stranger Things as they go back to work, and they are going back to work. He tells me, he gave me a buzz yesterday, he lives in Beverly Hills adjacent, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and he saw 4 productions, major productions, the old school style production, with the big trailers and all that stuff, shooting round and about his neighborhood, the West Hollywood-ish Beverly Hills adjacent area. 4, one day. Big shows. That means something. Something. This town is trying to get back to work. My goddaughter lives with me. She went back to work. She's an actress, works on Blackish and a whole bunch of shows. She's getting COVID tests 3 times a week. So the town is churning somehow. How we're going to get back into theaters physically, not sure, but the town is churning.
Hey, we got about 60 seconds. Okay, go ahead, Wade. Go ahead.
I was going to make a quick prediction. I think next summer is going to be one of the biggest summers in history, because we will be back in theaters. There probably won't be much distancing, probably won't be any, and people will be so desperate they will go see everything and anything. And all the stuff that got piled up in this year that it hasn't been released, it's going to get released next year, and it's going to be furious. Real
quick, Tim, give your social media websites.
Tim Cogshell at cinemainmind.com. I tweet at cinemainmind.com. And you can always find me over at the Cinegods and Digigods podcast and website.
Wait.
That's it. At Cinegods, at Digigods on Twitter, and cinegods.com, digigods.com. And you can go to scpr.org for the Film Week podcast. And
I want to thank both of them coming out. We got to do a part 2. And I got to bring on 2 girls, because they're not going to believe what we talked about. Their mouths drop already. So if you guys could do that, I'll figure something out. So movie reviews and more, their shows. Tim Cogshell, Wade Major. Thank you so much. This is Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next time.